Hi, my name is Avi, and I have written a book called The Button War. Maybe 50 years ago, my late father-in-law told me the story about when he was a boy. Must have been somewhere in Eastern Europe, I'm not sure where, the boundaries keep shifting. And he was a boy during World War I, so we're talking about more than 100 years ago. And he recollected how armies came in. There was the French army, there was the German army, there was the Russian army, etc. Back and forth, and into this little village. And when these soldiers came into town, they got the women to wash their uniforms. And the boys began to snip the buttons off the uniforms and collect them. And they began to make a game of it. That's all he told me. And I remembered this story, and that's the basis for the book. I set the story in some place that I identify as Poland, but I have no idea when this story actually took place. And there's a huge amount of written information and photographic information, and in particular film, motion picture information about World War I. And you study this stuff and you try to ingest it and make sense of it and try to give it a narrative shape and a form. Do I really know what I'm writing about? I hope so. But you're not going to find this on a map, though I tried to locate such a place and tried to understand what could have and might have happened. But that's the way I do research in this case. As it turns out, the National Museum, I hope I get this right, the National Museum of World War I is in Kansas City. So that's there. So I contacted them and asked them about buttons and got some images, and then I began to track them down, and I found people collect buttons. And then eventually I went to eBay and I began to find these buttons on eBay. Some of them are very cheap, Russian uniforms of the lower level of soldiers, the peasant soldiers, tin, easy to find. Gets more complicated as you drift in one country or one kind of country. And then I thought, oh my goodness, I'm collecting them now. They were really fun, and they're really interesting to look at. And they tell a story, and they seem to have been extremely important to the soldiers. And that helped me sort of get into the minds of these boys. Why would they want these things? They're pretty, they're strange, some of them. Crossed cannons, crossed machine guns, exploding bombs. One of the strangest ones is the skull and crossbones that are on the cover of this book. That's a Cossack. It's not quite a button, but it's a sort of emblem they wore. It really was fun to collect these things, and into that I wove this story about the boys collecting them.